1 year ago this March, as kidney communities across the globe were coming together to acknowledge Kidney Health Month, the world went into lockdown. A relatively unknown virus at the time, named COVID-19, was declared a global pandemic. The battle to beat COVID-19 continues still 1 year later, waging a formidable war. As of March, 2.6 million deaths resulting from complications due to this virus. It is an understatement to say the effects of COVID-19 pandemic have been devastating. For many, including kidney patients, the virus has been especially hard. It puts these individuals at a much greater risk for getting ill or requiring hospitalization. We also know that individuals who have kidney disease are more likely to suffer comorbidities such as high blood pressure, diabetes, or cardiovascular disease, all of which have been identified for increased complications from COVID-19. But in addition to the physical risks, like so many who fear contracting this disease, it has caused increased emotional stress, loneliness, and a decline in overall mental health and well-being. This March, as we talk about Kidney Health Month once again, we also wanted to hear firsthand from patients and their loved ones as to how this pandemic has impacted their lives. Today, you will meet 3 kidney patients with their own journeys and lived experiences with this virus. And you will hear from 2 family members as to how COVID-19 impacted their ability to care for their loved ones. But within all the challenges, they each found moments of hope along the way. And for kidney patients, it became very clear how their partners were so important to their overall health, their well-being, and ultimately their survival during this time. Welcome to COVID-19, 1 year later. Chief Michael Ricalma has served as the chief of the Qualicum First Nations for 6 years. He is both the caretaker of the people and the culture of the Qualicum First Nations, and he's very passionate about his work. When I asked him about his kidney disease, he said at first he thought he had the flu. He'd felt unwell for several weeks. But when he did not feel better, and because he'd promised his wife Sharon, he went to the local healthcare center to get checked out. But due to his extremely high blood pressure, the chief was taken immediately to the hospital. He did not have the flu, he was in renal failure. He was put on dialysis, which he opted to do from his home, and eventually put on the wait list for a kidney transplant. He is still waiting today. When COVID-19 hit, he had to balance his work, caring for his community and his people, while of course protecting his health as a kidney patient. The chief is here to share how he is coping, what he has learned over the past year, and some words of wisdom.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Ricalma. I'm the elected chief of the Qualicum First Nation. I would like to welcome you to the unceded territory of the Qualicum First Nation, and thank you very much for inviting me today. Okay, once I first heard about the word pandemic, I was somewhat confused like everybody else, but then things started to change quite drastically within my little kidney world, as in visits to my GP ceased every month. I would just see it as required basis. My blood work ceased every month. Being cautious, hand washing, gloves, masks. But I mean, for me, hand washing wasn't anything new. It's something from a kidney patient point of view, that's pretty standard stuff. I just kind of didn't go anywhere. That was my little world. So am I lonely? There's no contact. There's no physical contact. It's the people are now just one-dimensional or a picture. That's different. Well, my concern for my health is always there, but I mean, it's a matter of going, if you're careful, you should be fine. But it's the caution, correct? Like there's a sign on my door that says, no visitors. Michael is immunocompromised. And that's on the door to my office. The big lesson, like I had, what I was told the last time was to trust people. But of course, within that trust, now I have learned, that, it's not a weakness to ask for help. It's a strength. So that for me, that was huge. As well as mental health and physical health, well-being, I feel that another aspect of self-care, and that's exactly what it is, self-care, you start with yourself, is spiritual well-being, wherever you find it. I usually can find it on the beach, because one thing I've always maintained, it's really, really hard to be crabby at the beach. It's just relaxing. It's where we say creation started, in the water. So again, you go back to there to kind of look for, okay, it's just a grounding mechanism for me, just to say, well, this is, my world is topsy-turvy, for now, and what am I going to do? Go to the beach and just put it to the water, cleansing. Take those thoughts, take those feelings, throw them in the water. Let the Creator take them out and wash them. You speak about the caregiver role from my point of view as the patient. And Sharon, my wife, is my primary caregiver. And many people have asked me about Sharon and working. I quite happily say, no, Sharon doesn't work anymore. I'm her full-time job, and that poor woman is very badly underpaid. But that's a testament to the fact that I have her, she has me as the patient, and it's a team effort. It's everything from doling out medication nightly to setting up the machine if I'm having one of those days, even though she does it wrong. In my opinion, she does it the stupid way, but that's fine. But all these things are important to have that partnership and to have the love that we have for each other, how it's changed our relationship to really, as you want to get married, it's for better or for worse. And if this is the worst, we're doing okay.
Kidney disease does not just affect the patient, it affects the whole family. Patients often rely and need their partners on their journey with this lifelong chronic illness. With the onset of COVID-19, the role of partners and caretakers became even more critical. I spoke with Sharon, Chief Recalmus wife and caretaker, to understand what changed for her with COVID-19 and how she is holding up.
Tougher, I'll be honest, because more stuff has fallen to me, where I could say to Michael before, just run to the store and pick me up this or get that, or I could send him off to do something. We have to really think about where he's going, what he's doing. Do I do it? Does he do it? And so it's changed in that regard. Also, the first time when I took him to the hospital when his potassium dropped, and not being able to go into the emergency with him, and sitting in the cold, wet, dark, blowy parking lot, wondering what was going on, that is kind of when I realized that the whole world had changed, right? It was a lot more serious. COVID was a lot more serious than we on the island were pretending it was. Because for a long time we believed we were on the island, it's not going to affect us, we can go about our life almost normally, right? And then boom, you can't go into the hospital with your spouse, and it's real. I was texting one of Michael's sisters who had worked in the hospital, and she'd worked in the emergency room, so she kind of could talk me down a little bit and kind of say, they're probably doing this, they're probably doing that. But it was the fear of not knowing, am I going home without him tonight? You know, there was nothing sort of to go. And I don't think Michael was able to text me at that time either. So I didn't even have that communication with him. And there was a lot of fear, a little bit of anger, you know. But we got through that. He came home, and then we moved forward to the next crisis. A couple months ago in November, my mother went in the hospital, so we went through the whole issue with Michael, trying to get Michael's iron and figuring out what was wrong with my mother. And so my mental health took a nosedive, big time. And I didn't think to ask for help because I was so busy trying to manage the doctors and phone calls and phone calls from my mother. Every so often she would get a phone call out. And so I went to a place that you don't want to go to because it's really, I was angry, I was annoyed, I was my temper was probably getting a little bit shorter than it should be. And then Michael sent me to the cabin. And so now my mental health is back up to where it should be. So a little staycation it does wonders, right? Yeah, so sitting in the car in the emergency, and a year later, I can't believe that I'm still sitting in the car waiting outside the emergency, the lab, all of those places that we would normally go in together. 1 year later, we're still sitting in parking lots.
A self-described extrovert, Alexis has spent her life active and in good health, and in 2018 was on top of the world, having just married the love of her life, Rob. Wanting to start a family right away, they were overjoyed when Alexis became pregnant, just a few months after their wedding. However, about 5 months into her pregnancy, on a routine visit with the doctor, they discovered protein in her urine, and further investigative tests led to a diagnosis that Alexis had IgA nephropathy. The news came as a complete shock. Alexis said she had no real symptoms and no family history of the disease. But she delivered her baby safely to term and had a healthy baby boy named Hayden. Knowing that one day she would need a kidney transplant, Alexis and Rob desperately wanted to have a second child. And with careful consideration and working with Alexis' doctors, they were once again over the moon when Alexis became pregnant with baby number 2. However, what they did not expect as they embarked down this road was COVID-19. Being pregnant has its challenges, being a kidney patient has its challenges. Now put both of these together and a global pandemic into the mix, and this adds a whole nother level of stress to an already hard situation. But nothing prepared them for the dramatic downturn in Alexis' health that followed the delivery of her second baby, Sloan, and what this has meant for the family.
COVID-19 is probably, I'm an extrovert. I am a doer. I like to go places, and COVID-19 on top of being pregnant was like being in jail for me. We were very diligent from the very get-go. Rob was very well read on COVID, probably overread on COVID. And I think we were wearing masks before masks were even a thing. And I thought Rob was crazy, and but I abided. Virtual visits, and then we also, Rob wasn't able to attend a lot of my medical appointments. So that was hard for me because I'm now having to relay information as a pregnant lady is a challenge in itself because you have no brain. So trying to remember what I've been told and just not having your support person with you, it was tough. And I think not knowing the status of my kidney disease or like what news am I going to hear today, or it was very stressful for me and for Rob too, sitting in the car in the parking lot wondering, what did she hear today? Is she going to be in tears when she comes out again?
Yeah, lots of stages through this adventure that, I felt pretty helpless. I'd give anything for this to have happened to me and not to Alexis. I would have much preferred, and I still much prefer, to have taken this on. And so it has, COVID's added just an extra layer on top of that. But there's also been significant opportunities in that as well. There's been lots of times where the doctors have, called us on conference calls and do Zoom meetings so that I can be included. I think the most remarkable thing that I noticed during the process, especially as we were getting further along in the second pregnancy, was that all of Allie's 6 or 8 doctors were meeting every couple of weeks on a morning Zoom meeting, just to talk about her health and the health of the baby. And when I look back at pre-COVID, I don't necessarily believe that they would have been able to coordinate their schedules so they would have been all in the same place that way. So I think there's been some creative innovation that's happened through the worst of COVID that hopefully continues on, because it gave us this tremendous confidence to know that all these health professionals were convening on a regular basis just to discuss what they were seeing every week on Allie's results.
My second pregnancy, I was very closely monitored. I think I did labs every week or every other week through the whole pregnancy. And then we, closer to the end, like in the 3rd trimester, the doctors all there were hoping that we would make it to 28 weeks. That was our goal. And I always thought that I would make it to 36. I was very determined. I was like, I will beat 30. I will beat the 28 weeks. But so we were sort of close to 28 weeks. We made 28 weeks, and everyone was sort of took a deep breath. And said, okay, like baby will be just totally fine. She'll be small, but she'll be totally fine. And then every week from that point was just a win for us. So we got to 32 and a half weeks, 32 and 4. And I think actually having all the care and attention that we did, we actually had a beautiful birth.
Because of all the expertise and support from Alexis's doctors, their objective was to bring it in as a controlled and safe manner as possible. And they absolutely hit the mark. They were trying to find that runway of making sure that Allie's health wasn't declining at a certain rate versus the baby obviously being far enough along to survive and thrive. And they were able to find that sweet spot. And so it was extremely controlled induction. It actually went much more smoothly than the first delivery, if you can believe it. And
Thankfully. I literally hit the wall. My body just completely quit on me. And I had done labs around Christmas time, and within hours of those labs, got the phone call from our nephrologist that it was time to come to St. Paul's myself, because my kidneys were failing me. And it's probably the last thing anyone wants to hear on a good day, let alone on Christmas. So we were at Women's Hospital. We didn't even have a chance to go home. We just went straight to St. Paul's. Yeah, it was probably...
It was a little surreal. Allie was under the care of the kidney care unit at St. Paul's. Sloan was battling her way and growing in the NICU at Women's. And Hayden was at home with Allie's parents. And I was kind of in between, trying to do what I could to support all of them, but all of them not as much as I would have liked. We were living in a blur, a 1 hour by 1 hour blur, trying to keep our head above water. And, we were living, hour to hour by hearing how Allie's health was, every time a new blood pressure reading came in. Same with Sloan. Sloan was doing great, but in her own was having some blood pressure issues, if you could believe it. Completely unrelated, but also elevated blood pressure. So,
She also had a kidney ultrasound, and they were worried about her kidneys at one point, and Rob and I are like, this cannot be happening. I thankfully had a private room at St. Paul's, and just sitting there to being like, this is so wrong. Like, everything about this is like Christmas holidays. I just had a baby. I have a 2-year-old at home, and I'm sitting here in the hospital room sick, away from everybody. I can't even walk the halls because COVID risk is too high. Yeah, it was not a dream vacation, that's for sure. First and foremost, I think we've really learned that we're loved. Definitely felt a lot of love from, and I hope most people are loved, but I think these things really make you feel loved and have people show you that they love you. And it's not often in life that you're given such a real situation that is like life and death, and also a disease and an issue that does have a solution. So it's hard to manage the thoughts of what the future is for me, and when. But I think going through this journey, Rob and I know that we're here for each other.
It certainly has made us stronger. We've been at our breaking point countless times over the past year specifically. Sometimes we feel completely alone, especially because of COVID and the lack of human connection and personal connection. But other times in the most recent weeks, when we made that really difficult decision to kind of go semi-public and share our story, we've never felt so supported. Friends and family that we haven't seen because we're all busy or because of other circumstances have just, come out and showed us so much love, given us hope that there is a pathway for Ali and for our family to move forward together. And it's really that positive energy, the positive vibes that is keeping us going.
In general, people don't want to share bad news. They don't want to share that they're sick. They don't want to look weak. But we bit the bullet and we exposed ourselves and what we were going through. And I think there's a level of relief that's associated with it. I certainly feel freed of what I'm going through because I've shared.
Life was good for Renita. Back in 2015, the 30-year-old was on her way to the movies with her boyfriend, Sonny, laughing and carefree until it all changed. As she climbed the stairs to the movie theater and reached the top, she found herself gasping for air, barely able to breathe, and her legs were severely swollen. It was indeed a very scary experience that led her immediately to the hospital and to a diagnosis of acute renal failure. The months following her diagnosis were incredibly hard for Renita, but her bright light was her boyfriend, Sonny, who instead of letting Renita break up with him, he asked her to marry him. But at the beginning of 2016, Renita's health plummeted. She got very sick with pneumonia and ended up on life support. And so together they once again embarked on a new normal, planning and celebrating their wedding around Renita's dialysis. However, in the fall of 2017, Renita got the greatest gift, a kidney transplant, and life became filled with new hope and brightness for her future. But then, COVID-19, and Renita's world was once again turned upside down. Being immunocompromised as a kidney transplant patient meant that she was at much greater risk to get serious complications from the virus. Hear more as Renita shares her experiences with us about how COVID-19 impacted her world.
My main ward, I would say, is paranoia. Definitely more paranoid. So now, for example, I literally do not leave my house unless I have to go do my blood work. I have to go to like a store. I have to go do something, then I will leave my house. So for example, my groceries, I do everything online now. I remember back when this started in 2020, me being immunocompromised, being a transplant patient, I would automatically get into the routine of wearing a mask. And I remember people would stare at me. I'd go to the grocery store, people would stare at me like, this lady's crazy. I remember a gentleman would not get in the elevator with me because I was wearing a face mask. But now face masks are the new normal. Mind you, like I said, it's been a few years since my transplant. So I'm required to be seen at the kidney clinic in St. Paul's. That's where I'm being seen at every 3 months. So pre-pandemic, we would go down to St. Paul's Hospital every 3 months. You go in, you see everyone, you see your nurses, dietitian, doctors. It's a nice little long wait to see the doctor. So it's usually about a 2 to 3 hour time frame that you're at the hospital. Now, come pandemic time now, to reduce the amount of exposure you have to see others and COVID, they do virtual visits now. So the personal attention has gone. Convenience is definitely there. I don't have to drive anywhere. Driving, commuting, yes, I'm happy I don't have to do that anymore. So there's always pros and cons to everything. when the pandemic first started and everything was like on such like lockdown and I was paranoid and everything, I actually went through a little bit of depression where I was just feeling lonely, even though I had my husband in the home. You know, my niece and nephew would come over. We still had people, but it just didn't feel normal anymore because I wasn't going to work. I didn't have that communication with my work family, my own parents, because my mom had gone through a lot too in the beginning. That's when she was diagnosed with all of her problems. In the beginning of 2020 was when she had her heart problems. She was kidney failure, started dialysis. So me physically, I was not able to be there for my mom. Have been someone going through everything, I couldn't support her. I couldn't go to her appointments. They only allowed one person to go with her, which would be my dad. Overall, it was an emotional time. For myself as well, still to this day, I do have those waves where you start to think like, is this really the new normal? There's been so many weddings in our families that have been postponed due to COVID. We had a recent death in the family, my husband's grandma, and that was probably one of the hardest things to experience during COVID is the loss of someone. I turned to social media for outreach. There's so many groups and stuff that help support people, where pre-pandemic, a lot of stuff was charged. So you want to go to meditation class, they charge you. But now everyone does things, you know, no charge to help everyone's mind. So I personally have been practicing meditation to just help with that a little bit. And just trying to keep active as much as I can. Personally, stretches, yoga, trying to just keep happy. I have learned a lot about myself. So again, going back to depression and stuff, I've heard about it. I've never experienced it myself because I've always been in a happy environment, happy place, never had to feel being lonely, even though I have people with me in the home, just that sense of feeling loneliness. I learned another thing, like, you know, mental health is a serious thing. It's something that's now being talked about more because of COVID, I think. Because a lot of people are going through it, and I hate to say it, but like, you know, suicide rates have gone up. We had a family member commit suicide as well. Mental health is serious. So I have learned, that's one thing that I've learned about myself, is just like kidney disease, mental health can happen to anyone. So being more aware of my emotions and things to make me happy if I'm starting to feel down, you know, I'm learning things that pick me up. Starting to feel a little bit down, okay, you know what? It's raining outside, it's gloomy. Let's turn on some upbeat music and make myself happy. Let's go watch a funny comedy movie. Let's go, you know, cuddle with my husband. I don't know, go play with the dogs. I found more things that I can do, and I think I've just learned more about myself as an individual than I have pre-pandemic. Keep upbeat. Try to find things, try to find hobbies that keep you occupied. Try to, you know, one thing that I've learned is trying not to worry about things that haven't happened. So don't worry about things that may never even happen. Live in the moment. Live today. Tomorrow is never promised. Yesterday is already gone. It's the past. Think about the present. I would say, reach out to family, reach out to friends, support groups. Anyone you can, if you're ever feeling down or lost or you need advice with anything, reach out. Someone's always there to listen. As they say, you have like a solid foundation. My husband is that foundation in my life. Honestly, if I didn't have him around during the pandemic, during my whole entire kidney journey, I honestly don't know where I would be right now. Like I personally have, I don't talk about it, but I have, gotten to that point where I was so down in my life. When I was first diagnosed, before I was married and everything, where I was like, it would be easier if I just wasn't in this world anymore. And then after I met my husband, it's like someone will still love you, even if you have kidney disease, if you're struggling, there is always someone there. So yes, he's probably one of my biggest supporters through everything.
These are just 3 of thousands of Canadians across the country facing their own challenges with COVID-19. But here's to brighter days ahead, because there is hope on the horizon.